Simon Howarth.
Okay, many thanks. Thanks very much. Okay, we go on to item 1, apologies for absence, and I think is a full house today. Item 2, declarations of interests. If you have any obvious ones, if you'd like to declare those now and fill in the appropriate pro forma. Otherwise, if you find one through the course of the meeting, can you make it known verbally and also fill in a pro forma? Is there any interest at this point? Okay, thank you. Okay, we go on to item 3. And this is the Special Strong Communities minutes of the 24th of November, where the Strong Communities Committee looked at a call-in on the item building the establishment and capacity for enterprise, and a copy of their minutes and the previous the cabinet log and the original report are in our bundle today. I personally, as leader, thank my colleagues in the Select Committee for the work they did on this, and that meeting is also recorded, and we can see quite a level of debate on that report. And I think on reflection, I think we as Cabinet have looked clearly at what the Select Committee have said, and a lot of the focus around that debate was clearly around those parts of the recommendations of F and G. And I do also note that the recommendation, as it were, I think is a recommendation from Select Committee around that, which was a different approach that we've normally seen. But on reflection, I think there was a point made, and we believe as a Cabinet that we think the report ought to go ahead, but with those 2 items of F and G deferred until we have completed the formal budget consultation, as I can see there's a perception that the 2 are perhaps closely linked, even though I know there are other views around that. But recognising the input that Select made and our deeper consideration of this, we understand that we would rather look at this again following consultation and obviously the outcome of that consultation. I'll invite Simon. Did you want to, as chair of that committee, if you wanted to reflect further, and I'm sure the cabinet member responsible for that report may also want to reflect as well.
Okay, thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet and Leader. Thank you for them kind words of process taking place and all respects to the call-in recipients in putting that call-in forward. I think it came to a concise decision that F and G should be subject to some more consultation, actually part of the mandate as well for the budget. So we welcome your words on that, and hopefully the agreement with the Cabinet that it's taken to that proposal. So nothing else to say on it, but thank you.
Yeah, I agree that the perception has gone out about this report, which I think is wrong. And I just wanted to make some references to, well, first of all, actually the minutes of the meeting, because the chairman is quoted as saying that there are 3 decisions that could become, that the committee could come to. But nowhere in the minutes of the meeting does it say actually which of those decisions they have reached. But having spoken to colleagues who were there, I understand that the decision was to bring it back to Cabinet, but it doesn't say that. Neither does it specifically give the reasons for coming back to that, as is needed. Nevertheless, I think we accept what the position was, but I do want to say just a few things about it. First of all, there was a perception that these decisions would be implemented before the consultation process was complete. Well, actually, if you read the minutes of the meeting, it actually says in a reference here to, if I can find it, it says in a reference to we heard from the head of community delivery, who explained that the structure would not be implemented until the budget mandate had been scrutinised. So the very thing that you were asking for was actually agreed to at that time, and has been the position all along, because this comes about as a restructuring of the directorate, not directly as a budget mandate, but as a restructuring of the directorate, which was led by the chief officer back in March. And we have been going through the process since then, and this was the final key, if you like. In the meantime, there have been various job changes going on. And another misconception, which I'm actually very surprised that any member in this authority should make, is that what we've done is create more management posts. Anyone who was in this council at the time that we left the old county hall will surely have realised that the number of managers in this authority has dropped dramatically. And we have made savings up until now by dropping management levels and retaining frontline services. So anybody who says, as this says, that the managers have gone up and the frontline services have gone down, is wrong, is plainly wrong. So I do have issues about various things which were actually said in that meeting. Nevertheless, there is a misconception, and I think also, therefore, it is right that we put that misconception to the fore of our minds at the moment. But I also want to make one other point, and that is about the effect of this delay. We've referred to F&G. Actually, what F&G is about jobs and people's jobs going. And that is one of the most difficult decisions that any cabinet member or any senior officer has to deal with it in this authority. But it is a fact of life with a service industry such as ours, that if you are required to make the levels of savings that we are having to make, and let's just remember that we've had another £2 million burden being put on us for next year alone, and let's remember again that the levels of savings that we have to make would not even be covered if we closed every museum, library, one-stop shop and leisure centre. So the level of the savings we are having to make is enormous. It is unfortunately inevitable that there will be job losses as a result of that. And we have to enter into a process which is employee-friendly as much as it can be. We simply don't give people their cards and expect them to go at the end of the month. We look for other jobs that are available for them within the council. The effect of this decision now being delayed is that those people are left in limbo until such time as a final decision is made. It means that those who might have been able to look for other jobs in the meantime within the council can't do so. And it means that we will not be able to implement the decision as soon as we otherwise would have done, and that therefore, if the directorate is to meet its target for budget savings, it is going to have to find other ways of meeting the shortfall that has now been created, and that is going to have to be faced. So, whilst I agree in principle, I do have great misgivings about the process that we have now got into, but I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to move on. Whilst I recognise my cabinet colleague's perspective on this, I'll refer back to what I said that we've heard what's said, and we believe it is right now to move forward with the report. But we will consider F&G further once consultation on those areas which it links to are concluded. Okay, so I'm going to leave that there. Can I thank once again Select Committee for the work on calling that in and the work they did within that meeting. Okay, so I'm going to formally agree that that's the position we take, and all in favour of that? Thank you. Okay. Right, I'm going to move us then on to the formal agenda item 4, and move on to little one, target setting at a time of contracting budgets. And let me just get the report up. Okay. As part of our performance management work, it is important that members and officers have a shared understanding of what needs to be achieved. Members approve a range of targets as part of the annual improvement plan, our outcome agreement with the Welsh Government and Chief Officer plans. From time to time, it is necessary to review these targets, and this paper serves to remind us of the targets that have previously been set and seek approval to changes in a number of areas. And these revisions are clearly marked in the appendix, and you would have all spotted those. Some further revisions to targets are happening at present. Head teachers in our schools are working with our staff and the Education Achievement Service to refine attainment targets based on the latest pupil data. Any revisions to targets from this exercise will be scrutinised by Select Committee and subject to discussion by responsible Cabinet member, being presented before Council in early 2015 as part of our next improvement plan. This paper is not intended to lead to a measure-by-measure analysis of performance. At November's Cabinet, we spent some time discussing the Cabinet report card on the hub, and we do not need to revisit all of that here at this point. The paper is timely for another reason, as members begin to consider budget proposals for 2015-16 and beyond. It is important to reflect on what improvement means in a climate where resources are declining. Improvements can be defined in a couple of ways. They can be demonstrated by fewer resources to deliver a similar outcome. Increasingly, we may need to set targets which do not show improvement in absolute terms, but may be about maintaining a minimum level below which standards will not fall. It can also be shown that the authority is exercising its duty if it makes changes that will not deliver improvement in the current year, but which are likely to lead to the improvement in subsequent years. There will be areas of work where Cabinet will have to accept a flatlining of, or even a reduction in performance. These areas will need to be explicitly identified when new versions of the improvement plan and medium-term financial plan are produced as part of the budget setting process for next year. And the past performance and future trends shown in Appendix 1 will help members reflect on the extent to which the trajectory of future performance will be influenced by resource pressures in some areas. Future business cases that members approve to deliver budget savings must be underpinned by clear and measurable targets. This is vital to demonstrate that the authority is meeting its duty to make arrangements to deliver continuous improvement and fully understand the impacts of budget decisions on services. So I suppose this report is a reality check, really, because we have got this reduction in resources, but we have a massive commitment to retain services. But we recognise that we're not always going to be able to deliver some of those services to the same level as we would aspire to, recognising the massive shortfall in resources we've got. However, we do want to retain services, but we have to have a realistic view and a realistic target setting process around those to make sure they are realistically positioned targets in the nature of the climate we are facing. I'm pleased that Matt Gatehouse, author of our report here today, is with us, who can talk through some of the significant changes that we see within that appendix, if need be, because there are some significant changes and there is some narrative around them, but members may wish more detail on some of those, and I'm sure Matt will help us out by talking to those if needs be. So With that then, members, the recommendations are in 2.1 and 2.2, but before we move to those, I'll open it up for wider debate. Liz? Sorry.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I agree with what you've said in your opening statement about being realistic about the performance targets. But I would also like to point out that as far as education is concerned, there is no lowering in performance. And I would like to say that we are always raising standards, and I would like actually Matt Gatehouse to explain this a little bit further as far as the education ones are concerned, because I would hate for anybody who's reading this to think that we are in effect not raising standards, we're lowering standards. If I'm correct, and perhaps you could enlighten me further on this, some of the targets here, because of the process we're going through at the moment with obviously schools, the local authority and the EAS, sometimes the targets need to be actually cleared out and established whose target is being used. And I think a couple of these have actually been that case there. So I'd like to ascertain, first of all, that we are not lowering the standards within education. That most certainly is not the case, and in effect it's making them realistic and sensible in many respects.
Okay, would you like to respond to the education? I'll probably take a few questions for you then, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean the point around standards is a general one, and of course as Cabinet you've set priorities in certain areas and protected budgets in certain areas to reflect those political aspirations, of course being the education of young people being one of those. What we see in terms of the trajectory around education performance is that as an LEA, as a local authority, members and chief officers have set a clear upward trajectory for attainment, and in particular a sort of narrowing of the gap between all pupils and the sort of free school meals cohort. Where we've seen, and I think that is evident, so as the target setting process is undertaken in the autumn by Education Achievement Service and head teachers, it begins with the LEA setting a clear rationale and a trajectory for growth. That is then built on at an individual school and pupil level, where we say actually in that context, how can an individual school do? So overall there is a trajectory for growth. However, what we do sometimes see, and is reflected in, particularly in the free school meals cohort, because you're talking at times in some small numbers. So if, for example, you take the foundation phase, roughly 800 to 900 pupils in that cohort in total, of about 100 being, 100, 105 in the free school meals cohort. So relatively speaking, we do see with specific pupil targeting adjustments sometimes in a downward direction, simply because we know EAS and the head teachers know what individual pupils are capable of. So well in the long term we have an upward trajectory. On a year-to-year individual pupil tracking basis we do see some variation, but that doesn't move away from the long-term trajectory of improvement in attainment.
Just very briefly, just to make it clear, so these targets could possibly be adjusted again, and it's only because in effect we know the data better that they've been adjusted?
Yes, absolutely. Now the individual pupil tracking systems which are in place, which weren't there a number of years ago, enable refinement, and actually the process has been happening this week again, so once more the targets will be refined based on the knowledge of what each individual pupil is capable of and setting stretching goals for each individual pupil.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I'll pick up some other points I've got. Phil and Giles.
Just really quickly, I wanted to reiterate the fact that, and perhaps emphasise the fact that targets are there to be met if they're achievable, and we have to be realistic and we have to be flexible. And when the circumstances under which we set our targets find that they're subject to change, we have to reassess whether or not these targets are achievable, whilst always trying to achieve the highest performance that we can. So there's this need for for flexibility and realism. And yes, if we change our targets once or even twice or even 3 times, it's because we are looking to what can be achieved and the best outcome that we can get. And I note that there have been certain expressions of giving up. Well, we're certainly not doing that.
Giles?
Thank you. Yeah, question for Matthew. I'll use page 98 as an example, and I'm probably being very daft, but why do some of the previous year's figures have a line through them when they've actually happened? I don't quite understand that. I see that in the column for 15-16, there are some that have been revised, but also the 14-15 target. Does that mean we've changed targets or in year already?
Yes, in terms of that particular instance, it was where the data that was published. So what we're looking at there for 13-14, the revision I think on the volunteer hours one, is the revision of an actual figure. So it's just alerting members to the fact there's been a subsequent sort of data revision in the figure that we'd originally published, because now that happens either because of we've gone through an audit process and the data's been revised by our internal auditors, or because subsequent information has come to light and it's just been necessary to reset that so future projections are based on the right figures.
Yeah, well, actually, first of all, I need to declare an interest, having heard references to EAS, and I'm chair of the board of that company, so I need to declare that interest. In the resource implications, you mentioned the possibility of the £840,000 grant from the Welsh Government being put at risk. I was under the impression that all of these targets had to have been agreed with the Welsh Government. And can you confirm that the Welsh Government will be happy with these revised targets?
Yes, we've had negotiations with Welsh Government in the space of the last couple of weeks. Very constructive dialogue, actually. There have been cases where they felt, in one case in particular, where our targets were actually being very stretching and would have allowed us some leeway to lower them somewhat. But it was actually an ambitious programme that we are committed to and haven't taken up that opportunity. I think the issue around risk with the outcome agreement is not specifically around the targets, but is reflecting the fact that in this tightened financial climate, as we go for stretching targets, there obviously will be always some degree of risk around this £840,000, and it would be sort of remiss not to mention that possibility to members. In terms of the grant payment for the current year, we're awaiting formal negotiation from the Minister, but we've had very positive discussions with his civil servants on the current financial year's payment.
Phil?
Yeah, very briefly to say there's nothing new about that line. The grant is always at risk, and our performance review always sets it, and we always achieve the level necessary to maintain the grant.
Thank you. Other colleagues, any further points? No. Can I invite Councillor Petruni?
Well, this puts paid to the Tory nonsense that you can improve with less. With adjusting these targets, I heard Councillor Murphy say we could adjust this 4 or 5 times potentially. Are we not in risk of making this document almost pointless if we're constantly adjusting targets like that all the time? Just to reflect, my fear is that if we see a poor performance in a particular area, whatever that area is, and we think, we're poor this year, we're just going to drop our target to reflect the poor performance. You're covering the poor performance, aren't you? Because the target's there. Well, if it's obvious to opposition then, that was our target, we've dropped dramatically, why is that? But if you drop the target in year, how then can we know that you just poorly performed in that area? And if you're doing that 4 or 5 times a year, it becomes almost untrackable.
I'm not sure if you want to respond to that, Matthew, or not. I note the the Tory nonsense element. If we want to get into politics, let's just have a very clear look. 'Cause I don't believe that what we're doing in this council is nonsense. We're trying very hard to preserve valuable services that your party decided to cut money away from and would rather suffer on the vine. This Tory-led council, with my colleagues in the Liberal group, will do all we can to preserve services. So there's nothing nonsense about this. Matt, would you like to respond to anything that Councillor Petruni said? No, you won't be coming back in, Councillor Petruni.
All I would say is around the target setting. I think probably what you see is, as an authority, we're not an organisation that revises targets on a frequent basis. What we've attempted to do with this paper is to give some clarity where there have been changes. And what we need to be clear of is changes between forecast performance being very different from the changes in target. And I hope that what people see in the paper here are sort of revisions for purposes of clarity. And in some of these, targets have gone up as well as down and been more stretching rather than less. So what we're attempting to do is simply give some clarity around these.
Thank you for that. Chief Secretary.
Yeah, just briefly, I guess to talk directly to one of Councillor Petruni's points, which I think is actually a fair point around clarity and consistency. What this paper actually does is to report to you effectively a cleansing activity that we've gone through, because we set targets in a number of different environments, outcome agreements, improvement plans. What we're doing here is actually assuring you as Cabinet that a target that you see in one will be consistent with exactly the same target that you see in another. We have some small areas where we've had discrepancy, so we've cleansed that, and that's principally the reason for this paper. You can now have absolute assurance that you have clean line of sight through all of your planning documents.
Yeah, thank you for that, Paul. That's helpful. Councillor Howarth.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to say that this did come before Select Committee, and actually Select Committee did scrutinise it, asked lots of questions, which was really good, and they actually understood it as well, which is ever pleasing. So that means then we can actually, the next one, the understanding of going through the document is very clear for them. So I do welcome the document, I do welcome the targets, and I do welcome some of the answers which we will have to the questions that the Select Committee put. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Much appreciated. Can I thank Matthew and your team for the work which has gone on to give this realistic picture that we really do need in this changing climate we've got, and it needs to be realistic, and this gives us that picture which we have to use and need to use. Okay, so I'm going to move us to the recommendations in 2.1 and 2.2. That Cabinet approves the changes to targets specified in the report, and that Cabinet use this target matrix as their baseline when considering the likely impact of future budget decisions on key areas of performance, stretch targets accordingly, and ensure that these targets are communicated clearly to citizens. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Okay, can I move us on then to the friendship agreement with Yangshan County in China? Well,
Thank you, Leader. In introducing this, we need to go back, in fact, to the road championships, the cycling road championships held in Abergavenny this year. We looked for sponsorship for those road championships, and our major sponsor was Northern Automotive Systems in Gilwan, a company that employs 450 plus people and has been very successful, continues to be successful, but is now part of the Wakshan group. I'm told that was a modest pronunciation, but still, group in China. And at that time, the president of that group came to visit us and to be with us together with some of his executives over the period of that weekend. He brought with him some Chinese executives and also an American executives, because it is a global company now, a global group. 80% of their business is at the moment in China, 20% around the rest of the world. but he did tell us in a meeting that we actually had with the minister in Cardiff that he was looking to expand the business in the rest of the world. So clearly there were opportunities for business relationships to be made with his group. We do know that the group in Gilwan has got plans for expansion. Whether they come off or not, we don't know. But we felt that it was right that we should foster relationships with this group to try and ensure that we, first of all, were able to safeguard the jobs of the Gilwan employees, and also, if the opportunity arose, to actually bring more jobs into the area. So that was the reason why we were able to make those initial links during the Road Championships. Following that meeting, or that weekend, the company again visited us together with 6 representatives from the local Shangshan County. I'm told that's a better pronunciation. And they visited us on that occasion and the company introduced us to these officials from Shangshan. I won't do it anymore, I've studied from that county in China. And we hosted them here in this very room, in fact, which gave us the opportunity of discussing with them the very different local government that we have here and the elected responsibilities that we ourselves have. Quite different, of course, from their system, but it was a good opportunity to understand them. They would like to improve the relationships that we have with them. And for our part, we believe that there are clear advantages in moving forward with them. Opportunities in jobs, opportunities in other trade with that part of China, and tourist opportunities. As I previously referred to, we met the Minister, Edwina Hart, with the original delegation, and the Welsh Government is very keen that we foster those relationships. They have relationships already with one part of China, but they would very much like to foster further relationships. When we met them, and they have actually been over on one subsequent occasion, but that time it was just the 6 members of the local government that came over, not the company itself. And on that occasion, they came in a minibus, and I took them around the county on a whistle-stop tour. And it was clear from the conversations that we were having during that there were opportunities for trade going the other way, particularly in quality, locally made products here, which could be exported to China. Those are links which we would be failing in our duties if we did not follow up. And again, we've been in touch with the Welsh Government about the opportunities that there might be, not just for Monmouthshire, but for other areas, particularly in southern Wales, to make better use of the links that we've forged. So I would very much like us to be able to show that we as a council are prepared to enter into this further relationship with the county, and that we will do what we can to bring about prosperity for the economy of Monmouthshire. Now, while they were here, they showed us a short presentation, a short DVD of their county, because like probably everybody else, I knew nothing about it at all until all this began. And if we may, Leader, we just show that DVD now so that others here have got an idea of the area of China that we're speaking about. It's on the southeastern coast of China, and it's about 3 hours drive from Shanghai.
Thank you, Bob. I understand that the sound isn't working, or is it working there? Right, sorry? Oh, right, we might be okay for sound. If it's quiet, just please listen hard.
On the way of searching the Spirit Mountain, the eyes of Xu Fu were caught by the beautiful scenery before him. He was surprised to find that the island before him was sparkling with thousands of cliffs and jade-like boundaries which seemed very familiar. Stopping in the blessed mountains surrounded by seas formed 6,700 years ago, he seemed to turn a new page of the civilization history of Xiangshan. Hereafter, the traveler An Qisheng cultivated himself here according to his religious doctrine, and the alchemist Tao Hongjing built a temple here to devote himself in alchemy. The stay of various immortals is like a streak of firelight breaking the stillness of this corner in the East Sea. From then on, this immortal mountain surrounded by seas began to write its ageless cultural progress. Over 1,000 years, born from the confrontation between mountains and seas, Xiangshan is located in the north of Yangtze River Delta. It is really an earthly paradise with the location between Xiangshan Harbor and Sanmen Bay. With 4 distinct seasons, Xiangshan is abundant of rice, cotton, fruit trees, knitting, and embroidery works. The unique urban landscape is created by the uncanny workmanship of nature and dotted with villages, towns, and ancient bridges. The lights on the fishing boat get further and further in the old town, as if one step will bring you to 100 years ago. Located in the southern peninsula, the old town Shipu is the place where the culture of maritime commerce originated. The fishing port, fishing area, goddess Matsu and Rui are all the historical remains that come across the modern era, and they record the blood links between the people of Xiangshan and Taiwan Taitung. You can be guided by a wisp of sound to another world, as if the pilgrims crawl forward on their way to the belief with joy. That sound is the first horn blown on the China Fishing Festival every year, and is a kind of respect as well as conversion towards the vast sea. The exquisite and elegant cultural atmosphere of Tower Mountains infiltrates the life of local people, which makes Xiangshan a habitable urban space. The fine works of folk craftsmen, such as bamboo root carvings, paper cuts, and farmer drawings, are all engraving the tender connotation of this town. A town famous for movie and television races straight from the ground. Tasting the miracle and romance here, you will find this elegance has become the most enjoyable cultural card here. In Dancheng of Xiangshan, along the winding coastline, the harbor industries focusing on marine equipment, new energy and shipbuilding like bright pearls are inlaid in the urban jungle, which forms a magnificent industrial belt of investment and business. The bridge of Xiangshan Harbor that attracts worldwide attention is just like a drop of water falling from azure sky, connecting the guests from all directions. Supported by convenient traffic and abundant marine resources, the trade towards Taiwan and the marine science and technology industry have gathered here swiftly. The coordination and cooperation with Ningbo Free Trade Zone is doomed to be an imprint of success in the history of Xiangshan development. With a territory of 25 square kilometers, Xiangshan has numerous possibilities. Looking back to the Xiangshan harbor, it is a charming city with the rising Damu Wan, the deep water coastline rich in lots of resources, and the highest content of negative oxygen ions nationwide, which cannot be copied. Xiangshan, an eastern ageless island, has been read by the world for thousands of years. With fishing opening to the world outside, an open harbor has branded a distinct sign of marine culture for Xiangshan. With a modern industrial park, Xiangshan has spent a couple of decades working on the layout of the modern economy. The fast development has engraved the annual rings on the land of the peninsula one by one, and witnessed the territory of the peninsula growing stronger and stronger, which is filled with extraordinary miracles.
Well, there you have it, a short film which they brought over and apparently had made specifically to give to us on the occasion. Of course, our two political systems are entirely different, and the opportunity to actually explain to them our political system and our elected system is an opportunity that I don't think we should miss. Over and above the opportunities that further trade between us may give. So I hope that members, colleagues will be able to support the friendship agreement.
Many thanks, Bob, and thank you for showing the film. I had the pleasure of watching that once before, and I was absolutely quite amazed. I know nothing about China, but I was quite amazed to see that, and what a wonderful looking place it was. But what was interesting talking to the local officials who came over, obviously through a translator, how, very similar some things that we had to do and we did in our political lives, how similar we were, even though we were so far apart. We know cultures and ways of thinking are different, but that doesn't mean to say you can't talk to people and understand their perspective, but also build on the opportunities that this presents. I'm very conscious that the Wales Government are very supportive and already have had their own conversations with China and this area, and are supportive of the approach to create this longer relationship and through a friendship agreement. So I'm absolutely supportive of this. I think it would be remiss of us not to explore an opportunity which may be presenting as this one is. Colleagues, anybody wants to add? No? Okay.
Thank you, Leader. Just what are negative oxide or oxygen ions, largest concentration in the world? I'm finding lots of academic papers on it online, but I'm not quite sure what that means, and I don't think anyone here is going to answer it. Unless you're the scientist, so no, you don't know. Lots of ozone. A lot of ozone.
They're good things.
Any officers wish to talk further to this at this point? Kelly? No? Paul? No? Okay. Dimitri?
Simply anything that secures jobs or brings jobs into this county is to be welcomed.
Simon?
Yeah, one of the biggest employees with this side of Monmouthshire, the western side, know the company well, and twinning of towns, twinning of counties. I haven't got a problem with that.
Okay, thanks very much. So I welcome the warmth which that has been received. So I'll move us to the recommendations then. 2.1, to agree the development of a long-term strategic relationship with Yangshan local government to focus specifically on progressing issues and opportunities of common interest such as tourism, culture and economic growth, and to symbolise this intent through the signing of a friendship agreement. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Okay, I move us on then to the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring, Month 6 Outturn Forecast. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is, as it clearly says month 6, so it's the halfway point of the year, and reflects the outturn position, and also provides a summary performance indicator, giving information alongside that financial data. There's a couple of things that we particularly have to consider here, and, particularly in relation to item 2.4, and I'll read most of 2.4 out before I make some comment on it. And it's that members approve a revision in school governor practice to require any governing body that anticipates a deficit reserve position to submit a recovery plan prior to the council agreeing to the school moving into a deficit reserve position, rather than arrears of the decision reached by the governing body as currently. And it goes on to go into more detail. The reason for this, of course, is the fact that that there are pressures throughout the authority, and everybody must take their turn. And we wanted to lay down to governors their responsibility. And basically, this is all about the pressures that we are experiencing this year, and will do in the foreseeable future. And there is a danger of some schools going into deficit. The use of school reserves is being advocated by the Minister, as is the use of reserves generally. However, as it's the governing body that sets its own budget, we have to be sure that we get early indication of any issues that might be arising. Schools must, and are to be fair, work with us to make savings that can enable them to operate on restricted funding as the rest of the authority is. Governors cannot spend at levels that exceed their budgets in the hope that it can be recovered by a rescue plan over the 4 years. So that's not wishing to be alarmist, that's just sending out the signal that, that just relying on the school reserves and the county coming to the rescue is something that's going to be more and more difficult for us to do. If we move on to 313, the initial indications there is that the anticipated overspend for the current year is now down to 166,000. There are some additional pressures in there, particularly in respect of children's social care and health, and operations have made good strides in coming down. But social care and health is causing an increased concern, and there is an additional pressure overall included in that of some £158,000. Although it is fair to say that with all of the work being done by chief officers and their staff at the moment, the general trend is to come down closer to the budgeted figure, and that is usually the case as time goes on. And it is fair to say that at this stage we're normally looking at an anticipated deficit of far greater than we've currently got. There is one of the proposals, well, recommendations here is to effectively slip some priority investment budgets, and they're dealt with under 314, and reserves in respect of raising educational standards and the local development plan expenditure. It's necessary to reinstate them in 15-16 rather than the 14-15 where they currently are. There will be some redundancy costs that aren't generally a budgeted expense, and as everybody knows, it's traditionally expected that services bear these costs, with the proviso that Cabinet has already approved the use of the specific reserve in the event that they cannot be covered by the department's own budget. That, of course, has to be seen, and obviously everything that we can do to mitigate the effect of any possible redundancies will be done. But there are redundancy costs around in 316, excluding schools, and the full year estimate of that is in the region of 327,000, and they are included in the 166 adverse balance that I referred to just now. There has been a national pay award, and that's been agreed now. That won't affect teachers' costs, and our original budget allowed for a 1% increase. The agreed award is 2.2% over a 15-month period starting in January 15. So we will get a little bit of benefit out of the budget for the current year, but of course there will be greater pressure in 15, 16 and beyond. Members will be aware that the budget scrutiny meetings start tomorrow, and every opportunity has been given to scrutiny committees, and they've selected the mandates that they want to have a look at. The report there from 319 on sets out the position, so there's plenty of information there for members to pick up on, and I'm sure we'll do everything we can with the help of officers to give any further explanations that members are looking for. With regard to schools, I mentioned them just now, and about the Minister's encouragement for the use of reserves, but it can be seen from 328 onwards that further reductions in the level of grants from the Welsh Government will impact directly on schools as an additional pressure. So I wanted to flag up that we're constantly dealing with a moving goalpost, and as the position regarding grants becomes clearer, we identify further pressures as they go on. With regard to the rest of the report, it goes into considerable detail, and all of this will be going through the scrutiny process, and as I said just now, specifically with regard to the scrutiny of specific mandates that have been chosen by those committees. So I'll leave the rest of the revenue budget at that later. As regards the capital budget, as you know, the capital budget is now included in these reports, and these sections here give an update of the position as outlined at month 3. So at that stage, Leader, I'll leave it for any questions.
Thank you, Phil. Can I invite Joy? Did you, Joy, Mark, or whoever wish to add anything at this point? No? Okay, so you may be required to pick up any points afterwards. Phil, thank you for going through that. Can I thank again for the Nature Edition new reporting system? I find it really helpful, and it allows us to dig in deep and focus very clearly where changing pressures are, and I think that's really useful. I like the way also, and I hope select committees do, where it's been focused around select committees as well. That makes it also clear and helps the selects, I'm sure, with their planning of scrutiny, which is really useful. Okay, this is month 6. We know that, and it's important we do have a clear sight on how things are going, and we mustn't be, whilst we see a net figure, down to 166 forecast. I think 313 does identify that we mustn't lose sight that there is a slight escalation in pressure of 158,000 within service areas, and that's why it's important then as Cabinet members we do maintain the pressure and scrutiny and challenge of those service areas to make sure we can try to pull those back into budget. Nothing more to comment on that. I note the strong messages on school governance in regard to finance. I think that's prudent in this day and age as the resources are getting ever tighter. Happy to receive that report. Colleagues, I'll open it up. Anything? No?
Just one very small point, which I've been racking my brains trying to think of what it could be instead. On 316, under Enterprise, which I'm pleased to see is, this is talking about redundancy cost, which is for enterprises a fairly relatively modest figure of 23,000. It says tourism, life and culture. What's the life? It presumably is print or something.
I think it's meant to be leisure.
And there are leisure redundancies, are there at the moment?
It
Or have
relates to countryside.
Ah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Colleagues, anybody else? Okay, Councillor Petruni.
Yes, on page, two questions, Leader. Page 141, school deficits and the position of Chepstow, which is not looking fantastic. And I'm just wondering how, given, you mentioned the Welsh Government grants and the moving goalposts, we're not quite sure how much we'll get, and the proposed budget mandate of a £1.1 million cut from this council, how do you envisage Chepstow going forward in terms of its deficit position? Have we made any assumptions or any models on how many teachers or how many teaching assistants could be lost, trying to rectify that situation? And on page 144, on school meals, I may have misread this. School meals, basically, we haven't anticipated any of the 69,000 we were hoping to save or generate. Is that proposal dead? Is it not working, or are we still pursuing with it?
Yes, Leader, I'll pick up that. With regards to Chepstow School, we've had a meeting with, in fact, we've had several meetings with the head and the business manager there, or the standing business manager, and they have a plan which, together with increases in pupil numbers, lets them see how they are going to pull things around. We have got quite a large increase in pupil numbers there, I'm glad to say. However, there are still problems that need to be managed at Chepstow School, and we will be having further meetings with the governors to strengthen the accent on their responsibilities in that regard, and also to assure them that we'll give them absolute maximum assistance that we possibly can. But there were some historical problems at Chepstow School that have come through, and they clearly have to be tackled urgently. I don't know whether Liz wants to add to that.
The only thing I would add was that officers have been very helpful in going into Chepstow School and looking at the budget and putting forward ideas on how this can be rectified. We're waiting at the moment for a plan to come into place, and I think that we've known about this for a while. Chepstow have known about it for a while, and I think it is in the process of being rectified. At the end of the day, it is the governing body that sets the budget and takes responsibility for what it spends its money on. Just picking up on the school meals side of things, if I may. School meals isn't me, it's Brian, but I know that they have changed the menu to take into a healthy meals agenda, and I think I know that the meal uptake has grown, but I think there's a point of catch-up at the moment. So when they implemented it, I think the numbers went down, and then they're going back up at the moment. Okay. Sorry. I think it's ongoing at the moment, so it's in just catching up with the. But the new menu is in place for healthy meals. I don't know if Brian may have more on the sort of operational side.
Okay, thank you, those, and thank you for recognising, as we did, it's unhelpful, this fluctuation of grants and reduction of grants from the Welsh Government to schools, which adds pressure. You did talk about £1 million cut to schools. Just let's be clear. What we're saying this year is that we are flatlining schools. We're going to give them the same amount of money as they had last year, right? Everywhere else, we've been given a 4.3% cut. right? And that's going to mean 20% cuts in some service areas. And I repeat, we're going to give the schools the same amount of money as they had last year. So just so we can get that clear. Okay, Simon, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm sure these will do the rounds and the independent members will ask lots of questions within the select committees. I welcome the format. It's a really good format, and I'm sure members have taken to it, and lots of questions and praise has been given to it. I've got to pick on the leader of the Labour groups. Schools are a concern there, and further reading, there are more schools possibly going to drop into deficit. May I ask the Cabinet member then, on the basis of what we have here, we're 2/3 through the third quarter now, i.e. the end of this month will be third quarter finish. We should have some idea now of where we are with them schools, even though we're monitoring here the second quarter, because if we're in there, we should be in there making sure now that they are putting a performance plan or a management plan in place, because they haven't got very long. Could I ask then, is that the aim of where we were with the answer to the Labour leader's question? Because are we sitting back, or are we actually in there now making sure that they deliver on this budget year?
Okay, I'm going to invite Liz in, then I'll invite Nikki in to reflect further as well.
Thank you very much. I would like to reassure you that any schools that are in deficit most certainly have a plan in place for rectifying that deficit. If you look at past budgets, this is the time of year when, in effect, schools do their spending. When the school starts back in September, if you're going to buy anything for that year, you will be buying it then so that the children in the year benefit from that purchase. So at this time of year, school budgets are always at I wouldn't say they're worst, but that is the case. All the schools that are in deficit, we know why they're in deficit, and like I say, there is a plan there to rectify that. Sometimes there are reasons for it, and it needs to be addressed. Sometimes it just happens for a short time, and then they're back into how they are. With the, as we are economically at the moment, I could quite possibly see that there would be more schools perhaps going into deficit, but we have the mechanism there to be able to assist them and support them. And at the end of the day, it is the governing body that set the budgets and have to live within their means. I don't know if Nikki would like to...
I'll invite Nikki in a second. I know, Roger, you want to declare an interest, I believe.
Yes, I believe I have to. Page 142, 325. I'm a governor of Derryview that's specifically mentioned here, a school in deficit. So I'd just like to have confirmation from Rob that I should declare.
You can't do, Roger. Obviously, a matter for you.
Okay. I've done it, so I will.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Thank you, Roger. Can I?
Do I have to declare as well?
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Same thing, very good.
Okay. Thank you both. Can I invite Nikki Wellington in? Nikki, perhaps you could just give, for the benefit of the viewers at home, your title.
Yes, I'm Nikki Wellington. I'm the Finance Manager for Children and Young People. In relation to the school budgets, obviously we've been anticipating the budgets for 15-16, and my members of my team are currently out with schools, currently going through what we call a draft Section 52, which is their draft funding for next year. We're looking at 3-year plans for the schools, so we're not just restricting it to 1 year. We're anticipating the budget movements and the pupil movements. This is the first draft, and we haven't got all the information yet, but it's giving schools the time and the ability to start looking at structures. What we're also doing is working with all our cluster schools, all the schools in the clusters, to see whether they can make some savings by working in a better fashion throughout the cluster. So we are doing as much as we can to anticipate any budget difficulties that schools might be facing.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate that input. Councillor Hobson.
I just wanted to, because I think this happens every year, so I'll repeat myself again. You are looking at your figures, which are a snapshot, which is the end of your second quarter or halfway through your financial year. The alarm bells, if there are any, should be ringing now, so you've got enough time to correct things where they're going wrong or are going to put your budget out by the end of the financial year. So everything, as I'm reading it, is actually yet again to going correctly or as good as it could be expected to go. Bearing in mind your revenue budgets are notoriously difficult, and sometimes it can be said a best guess. Now, last year we were in a very similar position, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Councillor Murphy will correct me, we were within 1% of where we said we would be at the end of the financial year. All the indications are, from what I'm reading, I'm pretty satisfied, and I think, congratulations to our officers who are keeping us to budget. That's what the public expect. But particularly on schools, there was mention of the phrase, are we sitting back? We never sit back. I mean, I know that teams are out there every week, as they are in every department, and we are bearing down on those costs.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, I'm going to move us to the recommendations, and as there are so many, I'm not going to read them through. For anybody watching at home, you can access the papers of this meeting on the website, and so you'll be able to go through these again. There's a significant amount of recommendations here in 2.1 all the way through to 2.8, so I'm going to take those en bloc. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, can I move us on to the next report, and that's the council tax base for the following year and associated matters. Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is the annual report that gives information to Welsh Government, which we've already given them on a interim basis. But we have to give this final information to them prior to the final settlement. There is an increase for 15-16 of 0.82%, and the resultant 391,000 will be included in the budget calculations. But this is, as I say, an absolute standard report. It sets the council tax base and the collection rate, which has been maintained at an in-year anticipated collection rate of 98%. Apart from that, Leader, it's a perfectly standard report.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Yes, we see this every year. I have no points to make on it. Any colleagues, anybody want to add anything at this point? Officers want to add anything? Dimitri?
Yeah, quick question. How much did we consider increasing it to 98.5%? And did we consider it at all? And if we did, why was it not thought as a good idea?
98% is deemed to be an acceptable and achievable collection rate, and it equates to more or less what we do collect in year. As you know, because you've asked this question on numerous occasions, we collect far in excess of 98%. 98% is our declared in-year collection rate, and is purely for practical purposes. It has no reflection on the actual council tax collected. And I don't think it's necessary to go to 98.5. The Chief Exec might have a view on that, but personally I'm quite comfortable at leaving it at 98.
I understand you collect higher, and that's why I'm asking why we don't put it at 98.5. Since I do recognise that our collection rate is high, I don't understand why we don't. It's not clear to me why we don't go to 98.5. That's all.
Is there anyone, officers, which would contribute anything toward that, or Joy, or Paul?
Yeah, there's not a magic formula to this. It's about judgment, I guess, and it's something that particularly Joy has to take a personal responsibility for every year. You know, it's this whole thing about Section 151 and prudent sort of guidelines to how we set our budgets. So the rate that we set is an annual consideration, and I guess, you know, over the next couple of months we might give a little bit more thought to that. But as it stands right now, 98 is a rate that we're comfortable with. But maybe we'll have another conversation.
Simon? No? Okay. Okay, and... oh, sorry.
Thanks, Leader. I just wanted to say that delighted with 4.4 that confirms that the important matter of tax setting should continue to be a function of full council rather than be devolved for executive decision. So it'll be council members who will have to be accountable for council tax increases.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another bit of news which has just come to my attention. Many of you would have seen the recent national news where the Chancellor pledged a £2 billion uplift to education spend within England. And obviously, whenever that happens, there is a consequential which flows, a benefiting kind, if you like, which flows through to Wales. And we've learned that amount which is going to flow through as a consequential of that decision in England will mean 113 extra £1 million coming into Wales, which is very good news. Recognising how much the Wales government have taken out of local government, it would be great if we could see some of that money be invested back into local authorities to protect some of the services which have been slashed away. And that is a really positive news, let's hope, because that comes in unhypothecated. So that means the Wales government can do what they choose with that £113 million, so they could do whatever they wish. And recognising they've just invested £500 million into the health service over the next 2 years, it would be really great if some of that would find its way back to local services. So let's hope we can raise that at all levels with our respective colleagues in the Welsh Assembly to put pressure on for that to happen. So that was a useful bit of news. Can I then move us to the recommendations in 2, 1, 2, 2 and 2, 3. Again, I will move those on block. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, can we go on to next report, I believe. Phil, do you want to clarify our position?
Thank you, Leader. This particular report will be deferred to a future Cabinet meeting after we've had a more comprehensive public consultation with interested parties.
Thank you. So we're not going to have any debate on that one. So I'll move us straight on to the next item, and that's the Monmouthshire Local Development Plan Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Guidance. Giles.
Thank you, Leader. At the last meeting of Cabinet, members were asked to support the proposals for consultation on the introduction of supplementary planning guidance for community infrastructure levy. Likewise, the report before you seeks approval to move a further SPG for affordable housing to full council on the 18th of this month and then to wider public consultation. With all of the SPGs, and there'll be another on the way regarding green infrastructure, it's important to follow a thorough consultation process and audit trail, because once SPG has been through this and can clearly be seen to have been derived from the LDP, it carries greater material weight in the decision-making process. So SPG is vital in helping us to deliver our LDP policies and help shape the sort of development we wish to see. And it's essential because it allows us to elaborate and add further detail to policy in a way that the content limitations of the LDP do not. The SPG covers affordable housing issues. It includes national policy, affordable housing needs in Monmouthshire, the planning process, and of course review of the LDP and ongoing performance. And within Section 4 of the report, the SPG addresses 7 types of situation where it's considered that further clarification is required. So the whole purpose is to ensure that developers, and anyone else for that matter, know what they're expected to deliver. So that covers where the affordable housing threshold of 5 or more applies, so that's main towns, rural secondary settlements, 7-side settlements. Where the affordable housing threshold is not met and a financial sum is paid instead. It includes sites allocated in the main villages under policy SAH 11, and that's for the purpose of providing 60% affordable housing. And then you've got other sites in main villages, the minor villages, situations where you have conversions or subdivisions in the open countryside, and then lastly departure applications, so that could be something like an exception site. I'm particularly pleased to see on page 387 of the bundle that the county underlines the importance of pepper potting affordable housing in small clusters throughout the development to avoid stigmatisation of different tenancy or ownership types and ghettoisation. And based on recent experience, I'm sure my ward colleague Simon would agree with me that we only wish the planning authority under which our ward lies would do the same. This draft SPG has been to the Strong Community Select Committee for pre-scrutiny. Unfortunately, I did have to leave for another meeting before it was discussed, but thank the chairman and members of the committee for their consideration, and I understand that they were content for this to proceed. So I'd like to move the recommendation, Leader, and in doing so, thank Shirley Wigham, David James, who's not here today, Martin George and the Development Plans team for putting the report together.
Thank you, Giles. And we recognise this is here today to move it out to further consultation, and I agree with the sentiments you shared around the dispersal of housing. Shirley, is there anything you would like to add to what Giles said, or any of the other team?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. George, anything? No? Okay, that's good. Right. Colleagues, anybody wish to add? Yeah, Phil.
I'm delighted about the fact that developers who don't meet the threshold will now have to make a financial contribution for off-site. I mean, that's been a bugbear for many years. As officers will know, I've just done a search and read through the document a second time. There was an inquiry by members. Councillor Howell chaired that particular group, and I was the author of the report. A place to call home was seen as being as passed by Cabinet as policy, but I don't see any reference to it in the actual document. Is that just, should I be concerned, or was that just a mistake?
We were aware of it, obviously, because we did participate ourselves a few years ago. It didn't seem to be something that was directly relevant to the policy itself, but I take the point, that it is, it does set out the council's position on affordable housing, and certainly I could add a paragraph in to make sure that is covered, and we reference the main conclusions. But we are going towards, I think, some of the recommendations within the place you call home, particularly in respect of tenure neutral and the encouragement to low-cost home ownership.
Can I bring Kelly Byrne in, please?
Thank you, Leader. Kelly Byrne, Chief Officer Enterprise. My only comment was just going to reflect some of what Martin has already said. I think reading through the report and the appendices, it absolutely embodies that report, A Place to Call Home. In terms of some of those examples that Martin just read off, tenure neutrality, low-cost home ownership, assisted home ownership, sub-market rent, and I think the point that Councillor Howard's already made as well around mixed tenure and pepper potting some of the affordable units that we build and we bring to site, because the last thing we want is clusters and, that sort of old affordable housing by the railway lines. We don't do that in Monmouthshire. We try to site them prominently in the right places so they're connected to infrastructure and amenities, which is appropriate, and I'm sure we'd all support.
Thank you. George Ashworth, did you want to come in? Okay, thank you, George. Okay, colleagues, anybody wish to add anything further? No? Councillor Petruni?
Yes, it's relating to delivery of affordable housing. At the bottom, I can't see any reference to the fact that, as Shirley Wigham, is it? Sorry? Wigham, sorry. I do apologise. Put out a kind of update on the market about 2-3 months ago that said basically it would be probably more difficult to deliver 60% affordable housing on rural sites as the policy currently dictates. Is there this policy will not have any room for manoeuvre on addressing that issue, because it just seems like it's set in stone and then that's it, and we're not going to hit the target?
Sorry, did you respond to that?
Yeah, Martin, can you just say who you are for the people at home? Sorry.
Martin Davis, Development Plans Manager. I think the 60-40 target is pretty important, that the 60% is achieved, because the sole purpose of allocating these sites in rural villages where we would not normally expect to find new housing sites is to provide affordable housing for local people. So it is a small element of the overall target. I think it's about 200 out of the 960. but we do feel that it's important that it achieves that. It was something which was discussed with the LDP examination inspector, who also put forward the view that we should be looking for a minimum of 60%, because that is what achieves the aim of rural housing for local people. And there are some sites actually that we are in, some of the sites are in pre-application discussion that we are negotiating on, and we are quite confident, I'm sure Shirley Wigan would agree, that that these sites will be coming forward soon.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Simon?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just want to pick up on that, because I was personally with the group. We had to have plenty of discussion on the delivery of the 60% within the rural locations, the rural sites, and I think that has been accepted within Monmouthshire because we accepted the LDP. So I do ask, perhaps if we do run into problems in oncoming years with the delivery of the 60, perhaps we should revisit that and have a look at that, and perhaps try and work around that in a way. This policy doesn't do that at the moment, but it may be we'll have to revisit that. It was something quite strongly in the place to call home. We had plenty of discussion on that, and it does still give me concern, reference to what I've just heard. So we'll go with it, but I think Cabinet, if in the next few years that we are running really nothing with it and delivering anything from it, I think actually we should revisit that one. But we have reviewed the policy, and actually the Select Committee did ask lots of questions, and we're more than happy for it to go out to consultation.
Thank you. Charles, you want to sum up?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point that both Dimitri and Simon have made about the 60-40 split, but I should point out, and as Martin said, it was noted by the inspector that on the 23rd page of the inspection report, it does state clearly that if the viability of a development is in any doubt or could be compromised by the level of affordable housing, policy S4 of our LDP does allow variation of that, and that's consistent with the TAN2, the national policy, and that would require then a viability assessment. But again, the inspector made a point that it's important to start at the top and work your way down.
And one final point, Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. Just for benefit, for avoidance of confusion, if you can have your LDP, local development plan, you have your supplementary planning guidance on affordable housing, and you've got an affordable housing policy which feeds into that. Your targets, really an unfortunate name to use because they're actually indicators that we want to reach. Now, you might think, well, hold on, that's very different from a target. Remembering that every site that comes on board, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, whether it's 30 houses, whether it's 300 houses, it's down to viability of site. There will always be the financials on each site which makes so much affordable housing available and viable and so much that doesn't. And although, for example, you may well have a quota, a percentage contribution from a developer, it could make the whole development unviable. So you have to enter negotiation to actually get the most that you can out of that particular site, and so on and so on. It could well be the case there will be rural areas sites where 60% may not be viable, or it could be a percentage point here or there. I would rather we negotiate as we do on every single site now and get those affordable homes in, because remember that there's pretty much a radical departure now from what we've had previously, where we're looking for mixed tenure and we're looking for affordable to buy in perpetuity. We've not had much of that before, and we really do owe it to particularly young people in Monmouthshire who are struggling to get on the housing ladder, who probably would not if it wasn't for this policy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Phil. Okay, I'm going to move us straight to the recommendation then, and that's that Cabinet endorse the draft affordable housing SPG with a view to issuing it for consultation purposes and to recommend to Council accordingly. So, all in favour of that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Shirley and officers. Okay, let's go on to the recycling review. Councillor Brian Jones.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just start off by reading the recommendations, just so that everybody knows exactly where we're at. And that is that the existing method of curbside collection of dry recycling materials be continued subject to further review, given the lack of a strong evidence base on the necessity to change, with a report to be brought forward in summer/autumn of 2015. Part 2 of that is that food and garden waste curbside collections should be split on demonstration of a robust business case, with food waste to be treated via AD and garden waste via open windrow, the former of which is the subject of a separate Cabinet report that comes immediately after this one. And the latter, garden waste, is subject to a study as part of a wider recycling review, but hopefully that might be a local operation. And third, that MCC should explore the opportunities for community benefit from local provision, specifically focusing on reuse at CA sites and community composting. We've done a review basically in response to changes in EU and UK law and Welsh Government policy and guidance, including Welsh Government's preference for curbside sort collections. The default position is that curbside sort is the method of collection unless a council can demonstrate through a rigorous review process that it can achieve the objectives of the legislation by the current or another form of collection method. And you could argue that given our current state near the top of the tree of recyclers in Wales, maybe that's yet to be proved. To ensure the review is robust, the key work streams to date have been service visioning, stakeholder engagement, collection options and cost modelling, and material management. You'll find the key findings about these on Table 2 in paragraph 28, but we must stress at this stage that these figures are draft, and we believe the cost benefit of option 6 will be reduced. However, these figures are based on us maintaining a zero gate fee MRF deal, materials recycling facility, which is we're unlikely to get a zero cost one of those in the future. Therefore, the financial benefit of curbside sort may increase. These figures, however, do not yet take into account the cost of borrowing to invest in the infrastructure necessary to facilitate a change, and therefore the financial benefit will more than likely reduce. But it is possible that a financial benefit will be found from a change of collection. We are proposing to bring a further report back to Cabinet. Because there'll be further information we need to gather to evidence cost benefit, and also whether it is truly necessary for us to change. These include the need to have 6 months worth of MRF regulations, materials recycling facility, to evidence the quality of MCC materials. That is, when they are sorted by these third parties, that we know where they've gone and what the quality is when they get there. RAP's work on material management will not yet have been completed. The transfer station capital requirements, which of course would change with the change of collection methods, is being reviewed. More work is needed on material income opportunities and risk profiles. More engagement needed with the recycling market directly to determine interest in the different options being considered and the financial return that MCC could expect. The need to soft market test the existing MRF contract, health and safety assessment on collections options, Welsh Government not having published final guidance, public engagement on collection options, and a full financial model needs to be developed to demonstrate the cost effectiveness of any preferred option to inform a long-term business case. And these are some key questions that we have to answer before a report is brought back to Cabinet, probably in autumn 2015. And the first one of those is, what risk is MCC prepared to take on income generation on sale of recyclates? That is to say, if we had to spend more, that is in collections costs, to bring in more income, rather than rely on a MRF and an external organisation experienced in such management, what level of return would need to be provided for assurance purposes? What risk are MCC prepared to take with a collection change, given that the service is high performing and not a risk of failure of targets, and very popular with the general public, more importantly? If the review demonstrate that the current service is EU compliant in terms of separate collections requirement, but a financial benefit, no matter how small, could be achieved by a switch, would that be the preference? However, at that stage, you need to sort of think about other things, such as, for example, the amount of street clutter that you get with a curbside sort setup. Change over potentially 2016-17, at a time when MCC could be facing a reorganisation, is service change then a priority? And what risk are we prepared to take with our residents who value and use the current service effectively and have indicated that they do not want to change? So that is a brief look at the fairly weighty tome, but I'm sure if there's any more detailed questions, our head of service, Rachel, or Roger, are here to answer any further questions.
Thank you, Brian. For giving us a real good insight into why this is before us. Rachel or Roger, would any of you like to supplement what Brian has said?
Thank you. I'm Rachel Jowett, Head of Waste and Street Services. I think Councillor Jones has completely outlined sort of like the recommendations and the review. I just think, is to understand why we're bringing this almost holding report to Cabinet today. And it's because as of 1st of January 2015, there is an EU requirement on all member states and therefore waste collection authorities to have separate collections for paper, glass, metals and plastic. And as Councillor Jones says, the default position is curbside sort unless you can demonstrate otherwise. So we've been doing a bit of work on demonstrating otherwise to prove the strength or the business case behind our current method, and therefore to sort of like ensure we have a robust process and due diligence. A report is coming to Cabinet before the 1st of January 2015, obviously to give us some cover and also to give a general indication of direction in terms of where we're going. This report has been shared with Welsh Government officers. They were asked to comment on it and they found it interesting, obviously with Welsh Government's preferred position being curbside sort. The report has also been shared with the regulators of the legislation, which is Natural Resources Wales, who have commented that they think we've gone through a robust process, so it sort of like reduces any risk of legal challenge, which obviously, if you're not following the default position, you are exposed to more risk, hence why we've engaged with the regulators as well. So I think it is a holding report. There are some key things in here, though, in terms of some key questions and recommendations on where the review is going, which we'd be grateful for sort of like a steer on.
Thank you, Rachel, for that added information, and it's pleasing to note that we have engaged with the Wales Government and Natural Resource Wales, and they're aware of our position. I think it's commendable that the journey we've been on with recycling has been, a massive journey really over the last few years, and a big thanks to everybody's help put that in place, but also thanks to the public at home throughout Monmouthshire who've really embraced it and done a really sterling job to push up our targets, and through recycling more requires us, to bury a lot less, which is friendly for the climate, and obviously saves us money as well. Good report, colleagues. Anybody wish to add? Yeah, Phil.
Just to say, Leader, let's actually celebrate the fact that it's good people in Monmouthshire who've embraced recycling that have got us to where we are today. You can put in any system you like, but if it's done with a nurturing way that we have done, encouragement and a positive approach, we have seen those numbers increase. Let it be said, there was some controversy about the grey bag system, but it's had its desired effect. It's got us to nearly the 70%. I'll be corrected if I'm wrong on that. Obviously, it comes a time we have to renew those initiatives. I am particularly pleased, having served on having done some part of the investigation into all our recycling systems and options that we've got, that we're going to basically stay with the bag system we've got at the moment. The one advantage of that is once the vans have been and our teams have been down a street, the street is clear. There's no clutter. There's no boxes around the, and I'm a convert from the box system, I have to say. You know how vociferous I was about that many years ago. So I'm pleased about that. Very pleased to see the concept of community composting with our local groups has now made it into the document and the recognition of that as an option for the future. That's, I think, pretty much, I think that's going to become more and more important as years go on. But I'll reserve any comments about anaerobic digestion of food material to the next report.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought it was a really good report, and there must have been an awful lot of work going on behind that to put all those figures together. I've got a question on page 439. It's at the table comparing the various options and income and expenses of each. And I wonder if you're able just to give a brief explanation of on the material income stroke sales. I know one of the arguments of those who advocate the curbside sort is that the materials are of greatly enhanced value and can be used for different things, but on the table the difference isn't that significant. Could you identify what the difference in value is between each, please?
Yep, the difference in value is related to the level of sorting between each of the material streams. So with the option 6, you get the biggest level of sorting. So paper would be separate, which has the highest income value. Glass would be separate. The only materials you collect together on option 6 is plastic and cans, which can easily have a piece of capital equipment, which is built into some of these costs for sorting and then onward sale to the market. The other material streams have some element of further mixing, like paper and card together, which then devalues the value of the materials. So it's just in terms of how they're collected will impact on the level of income you will get.
The paper is the issue out of all those comparisons?
It's all of them really, because paper, under option 6, paper is separate, card is separate, glass is separate, and it's just metals, so the cans and plastics are collected together, which can easily be separated back at a transfer station. So you end up with 5 very clear sort of like material streams, where with the others there is a bit more element of mixing between them, and therefore the risk of either contamination or processing costs is higher.
Still, it's quite minimal, isn't it?
It is minimal. I will say that we have done quite a lot of work on material income. The option 6 figure is actually based on what Conwy achieved last year in terms of their income values. So it is based on a similar type of authority and waste streams, and they gave us their income streams for the various materials, and we ran our tonnages against it. So it's not a hypothetical, it's actually what somebody did achieve. It's just if you look down then in terms of the reprocessing costs, the last but one line under capital, you'll see that there is a significant difference in the sorting costs associated with each of the different options, and that's what then needs to feed back in. So for option 5, a difference of say £90,000 on income, you need a potential further £1 million on processing technology to achieve that small difference. So that's the further work to be done.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Colleagues, anybody else? No? Councillor Petrini?
I endorse comments that it's a very, very good report, and the problems with commingling, if you want to sell on the product further on, are obvious. I would ask or beg really that there is some allusion to it in the report, that we consider the effect on residents in the sense that another change to their recycling, another change to their rubbish collection, we're in danger of getting disengagement with constant changes to the process, where people are willing mostly to recycle and do their bit, but if it constantly changes every year, or it feels like it changes every year, you just get them getting fed up and then not bothering, to be honest. So I wonder if we can that's going to be a significant consideration with any change, because I note that grey bags are possibly going, as I understand it. So I would wonder your officer's comment basically on public kind of sentiments on this matter.
One of the key work streams has been stakeholder engagement. We undertook a survey of 2,000 residents this time last year to understand the satisfaction rating of the current service, and we also did some workshops and stakeholder engagement groups. And I think sort of like the next step over particularly spring 2015 is when we refine the options a bit further, is that public engagement. Because if we found that actually a change would mean residents recycle less and put us at risk, it's strong evidence to go back to Welsh Government on the argument on why we wouldn't change, because it would harm our performance. We have to take the public with us on this, and it is our public which give us this very high performance. It is just, unfortunately, the Welsh Government's guidance, the draft guidance actually stated that in the definition of necessity and quality, that the public view was not a legal consideration. Now, obviously, as authorities, when we responded to the Welsh Government consultation, we said, actually, it is all about the public. So if you don't get them to participate, you don't get quantity or quality of materials. So I think the public engagement is a key work stream for next year for us to prove, would they accept a change or wouldn't they?
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I hope the Wales Government did listen to that, because, you know, we're all about delivering services for people. They can't just do things without listening to what the people are saying. I haven't actually had a lot of negative feedback about our recycling. It's all actually been positive. That's one of the things which I've been amazed about over the years of change, how I don't get anything on recycling. In fact, an embracing of the systems that we put in place. So I think that just speaks volumes for what we have done. And I wish government would just let us get on and do what we do well, you know, instead of perhaps interfering. Okay, Simon.
Thank you, Leader, and I'll endorse them last words, what you just said there. This did come to Select, and we did spend quite a length of time discussing this report, and officers did listen to us with the report for amendments to it, which I do appreciate that they are in there. I think it's all been said. Without the residents, without them on board, we can't do it. What I'd like to ask a question of the Cabinet, though, is in the report it's quite clear that if we do change, we will bring everything in-house. I think what came very strong from the Select Committee was, are we actually, as a local authority, are we actually wanting to bring things in-house? Because the massive risk with doing that, and there are massive risks, i.e. price fluctuations, the world market out there. We've seen on news, on televisions, the mountains of paper, perhaps, which has been curbside sorted, sitting in warehouses, we could end up with that sitting somewhere in Monmouthshire. So there are massive risks, and that was a major concern from the Select Committee, that if it did come in-house, or we did looking at it coming in-house, we would be responsible, and actually we would have to find the buyers for this, for the materials. Whether it was good quality, whether it was bad quality, at the end of the day, if it's sitting outside or it's sitting somewhere, there's only a marketplace for whatever you've got. So that was one of the main aims and main concerns that we did have with this, but we do welcome the new report. And my last question is there a judicial review in England reference to European legislation on this? Because many companies have spent millions and millions of pounds on recycling, installed massive amount of machinery, and have spent massive amount of money there. They ain't going to let that go to go and collect it with a couple of plastic boxes. That ain't going to happen. And I'd just like to know, maybe the Welsh Government, but they're being driven by Europe, is there something in England happening which may cause us to actually have a different direction, whether the Welsh Government say yes or no? And my last one is, we had this as a key risk 2 years ago. Will the Cabinet now take this down as probably one of the key risks back onto the agenda of that document? Because we did recommend and you didn't want to take it. With this report, it is a risk to us, because if the funding is removed for all Welsh authorities, or things don't go correct, we have a key risk here as reference to the costs of what we may want to do here.
Okay, Rachel, I invite you to perhaps reflect on some of those. As regarding the risk register, I'm not sure how. I'll wait for advice on when we feel vulnerable enough that this needs to feature as a key risk. Did you want to reflect on some of those points, though, or Brian, whatever, whoever?
I think sort of like strong communities were very clear on their view about us managing the risk of materials, and that's why sort of there were those key questions posed at the end. Because if we did change collection method, you know, do we want to have that risk? What does it mean for us in terms of material management? Some councils do still then engage with a private company to manage those materials on our behalf, or on their behalf. That is a structure which is open to us, but obviously you wouldn't then get the full income level because you'd be paying then a payment to that company to do it. That is the bit of work that needs to be done if we were to proceed down a change of collection method. Is there a judicial review at the moment? No, there's not. We are just waiting for the first one to happen. It has been publicly stated that the Resource Association, which led the initial judicial review on the definition of separate collections, are just waiting in anticipation of January to get someone, and hence why we are coming to Cabinet today to do our due diligence. The key risk in terms of the risk register, I'll have to... The Chief Exec's going to lead that one.
Only because it's easy. It's something that you'll be asked to consider early in the new year when you think about your forward-looking plans for the next couple of years.
Brian, recommend.
Just one other thing, as regards legal challenge, we have taken legal advice from an external specialist waste management lawyer who are called Tomlinson Kiddle Law, and they've advised MCC should continuously review its service provision to ensure legal compliance. So we've got a very good ally in those people, and they're keeping us on the straight and narrow, and hopefully keeping us out of trouble.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, I'm going to move to recommendations. Brian, you read them out on individually earlier, so I'll take them on block, and the recommendations in 2, 1, 2, 2, little 1, little 2 and little 3, all in favour. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, we'll move on to obviously a linked report, and that's the anaerobic digestion and a memorandum of understanding. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is a much shorter report and much less complicated, but just to do what I did before and just point out what we're doing it for. Heads of Waste and Street Services to conclude negotiations for MCC to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Heads of the Valleys Partnership to progress the development of an outline business case for the delivery of appropriate food waste treatment via anaerobic digestion, which at any future point I'll refer to it at AD. And the Cabinet member, i.e. myself, and Finance, Phil Murphy, will be appointed to the joint committee, as we are actually with Project Worth as well. And the recommendations are to agree the two subjects that I've just mentioned. I'm not particularly going to go to this in too much detail. Sufficient to say, elected members of all persuasions have been always very keen that on AD. It was seen as a very clean, tidy way of doing things, and although lots of organisations claim to have a solution, there's lots of this sort of thing happening on farms. When you're dealing with domestic food waste, where you have huge disease risks of things like foot and mouth disease, the treatment process has to be spot on. So that's why we bided our time, and now we're in a position to join this organisation, which comprises Blaenau Gwent, Caerphilly and Torfaen. We've got very good terms to go in. I commend it to you because I think it's the right way to be going. And, you know, same remarks apply as last time. I'm sure Rachel will fill in any of the gaps that you might have found in your report.
Thank you, Brian. And it's good to see we can continue working together, and we don't necessarily have to merge to have good things and do good things together, and welcome the report. Colleagues, anything wish to add? Yeah.
Just one point, Leader. It was that questions have been asked as to why we're not doing this with the same membership as we did with Project Girth. That's because Cardiff and the Vale have got their own, and it's not practical to join it.
Phil?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for the benefit again, I mean, remember that we do have a public watching. What is anaerobic digestion? Basically, it's energy from food material, because it's not a waste product, it's still actually a valuable material. So residents can be look forward in future years that their scraps from their kitchen is actually going to produce green energy to heat and actually power local homes somewhere near to us. Much better than it was just 12 years ago, where it was all chucked in a hole in the ground and we walked away, and that produced huge amounts of methane and carbon. A scandal, really. And it's interesting that with Project Girth and with anaerobic digestion for food material, we have rapidly come to the point of zero landfill, and that's now within sight. And to think that 12 years ago, I think it was 2002, that Monmouthshire introduced its first organised door-to-door recycling system, to think we've gone from that to virtually zero to where we are today, and we're in sight of zero landfill, I think is pretty much a remarkable achievement. And it's down to people in Monmouthshire again embracing, but also with our officers bringing in techniques and approaches which don't frighten people or use sticks, but try to use carrots and encourage. And I think that's been a success.
Yeah, thank you. Other colleagues? No? Councillor Petrini?
I welcome this report. Welcome councillors working together. As Councillor Hobson says, anaerobic digestion is the future. Absolutely, completely.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Would part of the agreement be that the joint committee would be scrutinised with the other bodies, if required? Because everything we do has to have some form.
As in the same way as Project Girth, as you mean?
Yes. Well, not to that point, but I think what I'm trying to say there, Cabinet members, is you are appointed to be on the joint committee with the other authorities.
Yes.
If there are problems or there are things to be asked, would we go to the consortium, or would we go to you individually, because you will be jointly responsible there?
Well, I mean, that's individually, I guess, and to go back to the consortium, I suppose.
Okay, I'm going to bring Rachel in to give clarity on that.
Thank you. In terms of process, I think it's clear to stress that this is a memorandum of understanding for us to explore the potential of us joining an existing partnership, and it is the full intention that the outline business case will go to select committee prior to then go into full council, and it would need to go to full council because it would be securing a revenue commitment for 15 to 20 years. So there's that initial scrutiny which is important, and it's on the select committee planner. The partnership did not have a scrutiny model similar to Project Girth, given it is a far less value contract. It's nowhere near the value of £1 billion over the 25 years. However, I think in terms of reporting, onwards, it's still the food waste targets or the recycling targets are still the responsibility of the authority, and thus ensuring due diligence in the contract management structure. So in terms of if we did enter into a contract, just like it is with Project Girth now, it would be to raise with a relevant cabinet member, first and foremost for that authority to then raise with the project board or joint committee of the relevant partnership structure.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Rachel. So, yeah, there's a few steps to go yet, so that was very clear. Okay, then I'm going to move us to those recommendations, and they are in 2.1, to agree that MCC enter into a memorandum of understanding with the partnership partnering authorities, that Councillor Jones and Councillor Murphy be appointed to the joint committee. All in favour of those? Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next report, and that is the 13-14 Education Achievement Service underspend. Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I welcome Nikki Wellington, the author of the report, for this report which sets out everything in great detail. This in many respects is for information. This is to bring to Cabinet's attention the underspend in the 2013-14 financial year. As I'm sure everybody is aware, the EAS is constituted of 5 authorities within the South East Wales area. And that consortium at the end of 2013-14 had an underspend of £534,000, of which Monmouthshire County Council's share was £69,000. This report has gone to the other authorities, and I may be corrected, but I think it has gone through all the other authorities' cabinets, and we're probably the last one to do it. In effect, it is setting out what we're going to do with that underspend, how it's going to be spent, and how that relates to Monmouthshire's allocation. It was decided to put the money back to the EAS, and that would be invested into various aspects of education. Investment into ITC, into the MySID data collection, which is in schools. There was a restructure. Year 2013-2014, the EAS was relatively new at that time, and I think there was a restructure as far as challenge advisors were concerned. I think there was a change there, and that is picked up in the restructure. And it was also thought that it would be nice to support schools in we know that their grant is going to be reduced from various authorities from the Welsh Government, and we wanted to support that, so that is also there. So that's set out in the report at various appendices that go into quite a lot of detail about those investments. So I bring that here to Cabinet today. This report has gone to Select, and Select were quite happy with its contents and were happy for it to come to Cabinet today. So, like I say, I think it's quite straightforward in many respects. I think the only question really is about the EAS and bringing this information to Cabinet, that in effect we need to know if there is going to be any underspend or overspend next year, and how, perhaps in a little bit more advance notice. That's the only thing I would add to that. So I bring that to Cabinet today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Liz, for raising that. You want to declare interest, Bob? All right, okay. Yes, so welcome the report. Welcome the work the EAS is doing in partnership with us in driving up standards in Monmouthshire. The evidence of that has been really, really seen this last 12 months, which is really great. And I was pleased to be able to sit into one of the last Children and Young People Select Committees where the EAS was robustly challenged about its underspend position. I hope that the Select Committee took reassurance of what was said. It is appropriate, I believe, that this we agree for this money to be passed back through to continue toward improvement, and clearly the EAS needs to be funded appropriately to deliver that improvement. So happy to support this. Colleagues, can I open it up wider? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, first of all, Leader, I need to declare an interest as I did before. And I think it's important that all members recognise the relationship between the constituent councils and the EAS. The EAS is a company limited by guarantee, and the board of directors of that company is one member from each local authority. And the relationship between the two is very much a client-contractor basis. In other words, it is the responsibility for school improvements for the local authority, but they use the company as the contractor to deliver those school improvements. The underspend from last year occurred because not all of the positions were filled. Very new company at that time, and there were still some spaces. Since then, the company has adopted the national model as required by the Welsh Government. In fact, the national model was pretty well based on what the EAS was doing itself. Actually, having said that, the other areas do not have a limited company. They have a joint committee. But the national model was adopted, and further challenge advisors have been brought in, as Councillor Hackett-Payne has indicated. And in particular, the big change is that each local authority now has its own principal challenge advisor working for it. So I think Liz has said everything else that needs to be said. The only other thing I would add is that fairly recently, the EAS was subjected to, I think it was called a schematic review, by both Estin and the Wales Audit Office. And it was a very useful exercise. I think that we, and I speak now from the company's point of view, we learnt a lot from that. We need to sharpen up on our governance and be clear about the scrutiny of the company from the local authorities. And we also need to be clear on our financial position, because at the moment we are a company that is not holding any reserves. That is why this money was returned to the local authority at the end of the last year. In the normal course of events, that money might have been put into reserves and been available. But because the company was set up in such a way that it doesn't hold reserves, we had to pass that money back to the local authority. And now, of course, this year, when we needed the extra money, we've had to apply to the local authorities for that money again. I think this is an area where we need to look at the way the EAS is governed, and that will certainly be done in the next few months.
Okay, many thanks. Bob, can I go to Councillor Petruni? Councillor Howarth?
Yeah, I don't think they should beat themselves up, Leader, too much about the underspends there, because at the end of the financial year, as you can note, is does the company run to financial year to the March? Which it possibly does. By the time the accounts are signed off, it's nothing which.
Yes, it does.
I've got to say I have no criticism there, because we're talking financial year 13-14, which is March. By the time the book was signed off, and the process, I can't say, and possibly that will happen next year also, Leader. So all I could say is, as our representative on the board, you will have monitoring of budgets, so you should have a fair idea, same as what we've been discussing this afternoon, is where you are with your budget. I possibly would say that they should actually report back to the council as representatives if there are issues within the budget process. So does the company have budget monitoring quarterly, or is it 6 monthly?
Yeah, it has it very regularly, I can tell you that. But I also want to just explain that whilst I am the representative of Monmouthshire going onto the board, because it's a limited company and I am a director of that limited company, my first responsibility is to the company in total. So my responsibility is to the delivery of services right across all 5 local authorities. It is the challenge that should be put from the local authority is through the cabinet member, and indeed the leader as well, which is one of the reasons why I am there on the board and it's not the cabinet member, because she couldn't both be challenging the company and also be responsible for the company. So we need to be absolutely clear about how the company is constructed, and it's the same for all the other representatives, directors. Their first responsibility has to be to the company.
Okay, Leader. Can I just say then that as Leader and Cabinet Member that we look forward to you or individually, or the pair of you scrutinising and making sure that EAS on its budget monitoring is going to come within the budget frame for 14-15.
Yeah. That already happens, as I alluded to earlier. The Children and Young People's Select Committee required the cabinet member and myself as a past board member to be challenged on all elements of EAS delivery, and the managing director of the company was here to answer the questions on financial monitoring. So you can rest assured that from this council's perspective, your select committee, your Children and Young People's Select Committee, is already taking a robust line around scrutiny and challenge, which is good. I think it was helpful also, Bob, explaining the issue on reserves, because the reality is today here we could have agreed not to send 69,000 back to the company, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And as Bob says, there is a need for things to evolve to enable this, so this sort of situation doesn't happen in the future. You want to come back in?
Yeah, just one further point on scrutiny, or rather audit in this case. There has been the formation of a joint audit committee recently that is there to scrutinise that function of the EAS's work. And at a recent council meeting, it was agreed that two representatives from this council, and I think it was Councillor Penny Jones and Councillor Peter Farley, would go on to that joint audit committee.
Okay, thank you. The recommendations then in 2.1 that members approve the transfer of the 69,000 underspend from the reserves of Monmouthshire County Council back to the EAS. All in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to take us on to the last report, and when we see most meetings, the Welsh Church Working Group, and the list of recommendations are below in 2. Right the way through recommendations for funding up to 8, and you'll note the deferred application at 9. I don't plan to go and read every one of those out. You've all seen those. Anybody wishes to add on the report? No? Councillor Petruni, anything? No? Okay, nor Simon. Okay, so the recommendation, we resolved that the following grants be awarded as I just alluded to. All in favour? Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this meeting. Can I apologise for my coughing and sneezing all the way through? One of those things, time of year. Can I also take the opportunity from Cabinet to wish you all a happy Christmas, because I don't think we have another Cabinet meeting for Christmas, albeit we do have a council meeting. So we look forward to coming together one more time. Okay, can I thank you for your attendance?